Alright, this video is on solving inequalities. We're first going to talk about sketching the graph of an inequality. So when we're graphing an inequality using the number line, draw the number line and place the real number from the inequality on the number line near the middle. You don't have to necessarily have 0 on the number line. Okay, then we're going to darken the line beginning at the placement of the number going in the same direction as the inequality sign. So if you have less than, x is less than, you're going to shade to the left. So if it's x less than a number, shade to the left of the number. If it's greater than, shade to the right. Think about the arrow. Think about the inequality as an arrow. Whichever way it's pointing, that's the way you shade. If the inequality is a less than or greater than, there's no equal sign, then you're going to place parentheses at the placement of the number going in the same direction as the darkened number line. The parentheses specify not equal, which means the number is not included in the solution. So if there's no equals, you use parentheses. That means that the number is not included. If the inequality is a less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, so it has the equal sign on the bottom, the solid line, then we're going to place brackets at the placement of the number going in the same direction as the darkened number line. The brackets specify equal to. The number is included in the solution. So it's got the line underneath, the equals, brackets, no line, parentheses. Okay, so just a couple examples on how to do that. X is greater than negative 73. So make a number line, put negative 73 near the middle. Okay, I put a few tick marks. If you don't even want to put any tick marks, you don't have to. Just put a tick mark. That's what they're called, those little dashes. They're called tick marks for each number. So just put one tick mark for the number that we have, the negative 73. Okay, then we have to figure out which way are we going to shade. Since it's greater than, you're going to shade to the right. Look at the way the arrow is pointing. It's pointing to the right. So from negative 73, you darken to the right. Now the symbol, parentheses or brackets. Since it's parentheses since it's greater than. If it has the equals, it's brackets, no equals, parentheses. So the parentheses kind of go in the direction that we're shading. And that's it. Okay, so the next one, x is less than or equal to 12. So again, put 12 near the middle. And which way are we going to shade? To the left or the right? Right, to the left. And then parentheses or brackets. Since it has the equals, we're going to use brackets. And so notice that the brackets go in the direction that it's being shaded. So we learned how to graph. Now we're going to discuss expressing an inequality in interval notation. It is often convenient to express solutions using interval notation. We use the symbol infinity to indicate that there is no right endpoint. So it goes on forever to the right. And we use the symbol negative infinity to indicate that there is no left endpoint. That means it goes on to the left forever. So the symbol is called infinity. If there's no symbol, it's positive infinity. If there's a negative in front, it's called negative infinity. And we just discussed this already. If it's less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, we're going to use brackets to indicate that b is included in the solution set. And if it doesn't have the equals, If x is less than b or x is greater than b, then we use parentheses to indicate that the b is not included in the solution set. Since the infinity symbol indicates there's no endpoint, we will always use parentheses for infinity. Okay, so what does this all mean? We're writing our answer differently. We could write our answer with a graph or using symbols. Now think about if you had to type your answer. Making a graph isn't that easy. You got to make a number line, and then you got to darken it in one direction, and then you got to put in the brackets at the number. But it's easy to use symbols to state a solution when you could just type on your keyboard. You could type a parentheses or a bracket or an infinity symbol. For an infinity symbol, you just have to use your symbols and a comma. So those are all easy to type in. But if you want to type in a number line and put the number below the number line and tick marks and shade in one line darker than the other part of the line, that's not so simple. So this is another way of writing it if you're going to write it simply. Okay, so here's the graphs, and the interval notation is there to the right. So the top graph is from a to infinity. Infinity is on the right. Negative infinity is on the left. So notice that the a is written first in the parentheses and the infinity second. Kind of like how we read left to right. And for a, it's parentheses because the symbol at a is parentheses. And infinity is always going to be parentheses. The second one is almost the same, but the a has brackets. So we use brackets right before the a. The third one is going to the left. So the negative infinity is written before the b. Again, negative infinity is always parentheses, and because b has parentheses also, then we use b. We use parentheses for b. And the last one, almost the same, but at b we have brackets. Okay, so that's how they're written in interval notation. See how the column to the right is easier to type than the column on the left? Okay, so let's graph these and then write it in interval notation. So x less than 2, you might want to pause the video and then work it out. Okay, here's the graph. So it's x less than 2, you put 2 on the number line, and then shade to the left. Since there's no equals, we're going to use parentheses. Then in interval notation, you're going to put the negative infinity first, and then the 2 second, left to right. For part B, same thing. We're going to put -4 on the number line, and then we're going to shade to the left. Since it has the equals, we're going to use brackets. So this one will be negative infinity, comma, -4, brackets. Remember, infinity or negative infinity is always parentheses. X is greater than 5. So that's from 5 to infinity. So it'd be parentheses, 5, comma, infinity, parentheses. Last one. This one's going to be from -1 to infinity. And at -1, we're going to use brackets. So brackets, -1, comma, infinity. Okay, so now we're going to solve inequalities, and we're going to follow the same rules as we did for solving equations. Almost. There's one exception. The exception is that whenever you multiply or divide by a negative, the direction of the inequality sign must be changed. So don't lose your inequality symbol. You keep bringing it down as you perform each step. But if you divide or multiply by a negative number, not into a negative number, but by a negative number, then you have to reverse the inequality symbol. Just the way it works out. Like, let's look at this inequality. 3 is less than 7. That's true, right? 3 is less than 7. But if I multiply by negative 4 on both sides, I get negative 12 is greater, I get negative 12 and 28. Well, negative 12 is greater than negative 28. So to keep it true, we have to switch the inequality symbol. If you do not flip it, then it's no longer a true statement. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Whenever you multiply or divide by a negative, you have to flip it. Okay, so we're going to solve this inequality, and then we're going to write it in set notation. So we don't have to graph it, and we do not have to write it in interval notation. Okay, so what's our first step to get this solved? We want to get x by itself. So we should subtract 3 on both sides. Okay, the 3's cancel. Bring down the 2x, negative 7 and negative 3 is negative 10. And we're not dividing by a negative, so we do not flip the inequality symbol. Okay, now what are we going to divide by? We're going to divide by 2. Are we dividing by a negative? No. We're dividing into a negative, so we do not flip the inequality symbol. So we're left with x is less than negative 5. So set notation means we use braces, and we put an x in front of this vertical line, and that vertical line means the word such that. So braces x such that x is less than negative 5. So that's called set notation. Okay, let's do another one. Again, the directions say to write it in set notation. So what are we going to do first? We're going to divide by negative 3. Oh, this time we're dividing by a negative. So what do we do when we divide by a negative? Right, we have to reverse the inequality symbol. And then we have already x by itself, so we're done now. We just need to write it in set notation. So again, you write those braces, and then the x, and then a vertical line that means such that, and then just recopy what we have here. That's called set notation. Okay, here's our next example. We're going to solve inequality. We've done that. We're then going to graph it on a number line. Okay, that'll be me. And then we're going to write it in interval notation. Oh, this is good. Okay, so what's our first step? Our first step is to get rid of the 4. So we're going to minus 4 on both sides. Okay, our second step, divide by negative 3 on both sides. Oh, here we are. We're dividing by a negative. What does that mean? You got to flip it, right? So x is greater than negative 5. So we have solved the inequality. Now we need to make a graph. So make a number line, put negative 5 right in the middle. Okay. Which way are we going to shade? To the left or to the right? We're going to shade to the right. Brackets or parentheses? Parentheses, right? There's no equal. Now we need to write it in interval notation. So we're shading it from -5 to infinity. Right, infinity's over there. So you just bring it down, -5, comma, infinity. And because -5 has parentheses, we're going to use parentheses in front of the -5. And infinity is also always parentheses. So there we have our answer as a graph and in interval notation. Sometimes it may only ask you for a graph. Sometimes you may only be asked for the interval notation. Okay, here's another one. Very similar to the equations, right? You have to distribute to get rid of the parentheses and then get x by itself. Do not put an equal sign. Just keep bringing the inequality sign down in the same direction unless you divide by a negative or multiply by a negative. Okay, so distribute the 2 and then subtract 3x on both sides. That gives us -x plus 6 greater than or equal to -12. Now subtract 6 on both sides. So we have -x greater than or equal to -18. We've got to get rid of that negative in front of the x, so we're going to divide by -1. You could also multiply by -1. It's your choice. But either way, if we divide by -1 or multiply by -1, right, we have to reverse the inequality symbol. So it's x is less than or equal to 18. Okay, we solved it. Are we done? Heck no, right? We got to write it in interval notation. Even if it doesn't say the graph, I always will graph it because I want to make sure I do it correctly. Okay, so put 18 near the middle. Which way are we going to shade? To the left? Brackets or parentheses? Brackets, right? Has it equal. Now, which way is it being shaded? It's being shaded to negative infinity because that's on the left. So now you just bring those two symbols down in order with a comma in between. In front of negative infinity is parentheses, and for the 18 we're going to use brackets. There's your answer. Okay, another similar problem. You have to distribute. We're going to do the same thing. Again, it doesn't say to graph it. I'm going to graph it. So don't forget it's a -2 that we distribute. That's a -6x plus 8. Collect like terms. On the left side, the x's cancel. So we get 5 greater than or equal to 3x minus 3. Now we're trying to get x by itself, so add 3 to both sides. 8 is greater than or equal to 3x, divide both sides by 3. And we get 8/3 greater than or equal to x. I'm going to rewrite it because I want the x to be first. When you rewrite it with the x first, make sure that the arrow is still pointing towards the x and opening up towards the 8/3. So that is x is less than or equal to 8/3. It doesn't really make too much sense if you say 8/3 is greater than or equal to x. It makes more sense if you say x is less than or equal to 8/3. Okay, put 8/3 on a number line. Shade to the left. We're going to use brackets. There's an equal sign. So we're shading to the left, so that's negative infinity. Interval notation, bring down the symbols. Negative infinity, comma, 8/3. Brackets on the 8/3. Parentheses on the negative infinity. Okay, fractions. Well, we know what to do when we have fractions. We got to get rid of them. What is our LCD? That's our first step. Find the LCD. LCD is 12. So you multiply each fraction by 12. Even the 13? Heck yeah, even the 13. 13 is a fraction. It's 13 over 1. Okay, now reduce. 4 goes into 12 3 times, or 3 goes into 12 4 times. So that gives us 3x minus 16x is greater than negative 156. Add the like terms on the left-hand side. That's negative 13x is greater than negative 156. Divide both sides by negative 13. We're dividing by a negative, so we have to flip it, right? So x is less than 12. Okay, put 12 on a number line. Which way are we going to shade? X is less than 12. Right, to the left. Brackets or parentheses. Parentheses. I said the wrong one. There's no equal sign, so it is parentheses. Negative infinity is to the left, so it's going to be negative infinity, comma 12, parentheses on both sides. Okay, another one with fractions. Same idea. What's our LCD? LCD is 9, so everybody gets a 9. Now we're going to reduce. Notice that I put parentheses around the numerator. It'll help me to remember to distribute the number that I'm left with. Okay, so then on the left we have 3x plus 2. There's nothing left in front of that. On the second set of parentheses, we have a negative 3 to distribute. So 3x plus 2, when you distribute the negative 3 times 2x is negative 6x, and negative 3 times positive 1 is negative 3. And then a negative 9 on the right-hand side. Add the like terms. Get x by itself, so add 1 to both sides. Then divide by negative 3. Oh, here we go. We're dividing by a negative, so we have to flip it. X is less than 8/3. Put on a number line. It's less than, so we're going to shade to the left. There's no equals, so parentheses. So we're shading to the left, that's negative infinity. So it's going to be negative infinity to 8/3, parentheses on both sides. Okay, last problem here. A word problem. It's not too bad though. Sometimes we're more afraid of word problems than we should be. Kevin had scores of 84, 64, 76, and 92 on the first 4 exams of the semester. What score must he obtain on the 5th exam to have an average of 80 or better for the 5 exams? So we're looking for what he needs on the 5th exam. That's going to be our x. So x equals the score Kevin needs on the 5th exam. That's one of the steps in word problems, is always let x be whatever you're looking for. Okay, so we're talking about average. How do we find an average? We add all the scores and divide by the number of scores. So we have 4 scores listed, but the 5th score is x. So we're going to find the average of all 5, including the one we don't know, divide by 5, and then we're going to say the average has to be 80 or better. That's an inequality. That's a greater than or equal to. So instead of using the equals, we're going to use an inequality symbol. and we want it to be greater than or equal to 80. So here's our inequality. 84 plus 64 plus 76 plus 92 plus x all over 5 greater than or equal to 80. Okay, now we add the 4 that we do know. That should give you 316. So 316 plus x over 5 greater than or equal to 80. Now we got to get rid of fractions, right? So this time we're going to multiply by 5 on both sides. On the left-hand side, the 5's will cancel. So on the left side, we have 316 plus x is greater than or equal to 400. Subtract 316 on both sides, and we get x is greater than or equal to 84. That kind of makes sense, right? Right, that's what he needs, an 84. So that's the answer. He must receive a score of 84 or better. All right, that's the end of this video. I'll see you here for the next one.